The rain had already turned the dirt road into a river of mud when Claire stopped the car. The GPS had lost signal miles ago, and the only light came from her headlights cutting through the mist. A weathered wooden sign appeared just ahead. Hollow Creek Cemetery. Established 1821. She sighed. Finally. Claire hadn't planned on coming back. Not after everything that happened 15 years ago. But after her mother's death, the letter arrived. Yellowed paper, sealed with wax. No return address. For Claire Whitmore, you must return to the tomb. The family is waiting. She had thought it was a sick joke, until she saw her mother's handwriting at the bottom. The cemetery looked even smaller than she remembered. Rows of crooked stones and leaning angels swallowed by fog. The air was heavy, sweet with the scent of wet earth and decayed flowers. She parked the car and grabbed her flashlight. Let's get this over with. Her boots sank into the mud as she followed the winding path to the far edge of the graveyard, where an old mausoleum stood. The Whitmore family tomb. The stone door was cracked open. She frowned. That's not possible. They sealed it years ago. The beam of her flashlight trembled as she stepped closer. Inside it was colder, unnaturally so. Dust floated in the air like mist. And then she saw it. On the floor, someone had carved fresh words into the stone with something sharp. Welcome back, Claire. Claire hesitated at the entrance of the mausoleum, her flashlight shaking. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, but the words on the floor seemed to pull her forward. As she stepped inside, the air felt denser, almost alive. The faint smell of damp stone and aged wood filled her lungs. Shadows stretched across the walls, distorted by the flickering light of her flashlight. Rows of family plaques lined the walls, names worn smooth with age. Whitmore, 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 over and over. And in the center of the tomb, a stone coffin lay half buried in shadow. Then she heard it, a soft whisper, barely audible, like someone exhaling directly into her ear. Claire, why did you leave us? She spun, shining her flashlight into every corner. Nothing, just the stone, the dust, the cold. Her hand trembled as she moved closer to the coffin. A chill ran down her spine. The whisper came again, this time clearer. You cannot hide from what is ours. Claire's heartbeat thundered in her ears. She wanted to run, but her feet were rooted to the floor. Something was in the tomb with her, something that knew her name, something that had been waiting. The coffin lid creaked, slowly, deliberately. Dust cascaded to the floor. Claire froze. Then she saw it. A hand, pale, thin, pressing against the stone from inside. The fingers flexed, as if testing the strength of the seal, and the whisper became a soft laugh, echoing through the mausoleum. It's time to remember. The flashlight flickered. For a second, Claire thought she saw figures standing in the shadows, members of her family, faces twisted with sorrow and longing. But when the light stabilized, she was alone, except for the stone coffin and the hand that refused to stay inside. Claire stepped back, heart hammering in her chest. The hand on the coffin didn't move anymore, but the air around her seemed heavier, as if the walls themselves were watching. She tried to reason with herself. It's just her imagination. Old tombs make noises. She's tired. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. The shadows along the walls began to shift, subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. Then, in a narrow corner of the tomb, Claire glimpsed a face. Pale, expressionless, staring directly at her. Another face appeared, then another. Dozens of them pressed against the stone, their eyes hollow, mouths moving as if whispering, but no sound escaped. Claire's flashlight flickered, and in that brief darkness, the whisper returned. "We remember. Do you?" Her breath caught. Remember what? Something compelled her to move deeper into the tomb. Each step echoed against the stone, a hollow sound that seemed to awaken the shadows. A cold breeze brushed her neck, carrying faint murmurs, almost like a conversation, fragmented, impossible to understand, but unmistakably human. She reached the center again, where the coffin lay. The hand had vanished, yet the whispers grew louder, circling her from all sides. Then Claire noticed something horrifying. The plaques on the walls, the names of the Whitmore family, were rearranging themselves, letters shifting, forming words she could read. "You were ours first." Claire stumbled back, her flashlight rolling across the floor. The beam caught a mirror at the far end of the tomb, an old, cracked glass framed in tarnished silver. For a heartbeat, she saw herself reflected. Then, behind her reflection, she saw them, her ancestors, the Whitmores, standing silently, watching, their faces etched with sorrow and silent accusation. She spun around. Nothing. Only the shadows, only the stone walls, only the suffocating stillness. Then the whispers turned to soft, deliberate footsteps, approaching, yet not touching the stone floor. Claire backed away towards the exit, realizing too late that the tomb had changed. The hallway she had entered through no longer existed. The walls stretched further than possible, narrowing into darkness. "You cannot leave. Not yet," the voice breathed, echoing from everywhere at once. Claire's heart raced. The realization hit her. She wasn't alone, and the forgotten family wasn't ready to let her go. Claire's chest heaved as she pressed herself against the cold stone wall, trying to make sense of the impossible. The hallway behind her had vanished completely, replaced by endless corridors of shadow, each one narrower and darker than the last. She held her flashlight high, the weak beam slicing through the black. But the further she went, the more the shadows seemed to move, stretching toward her, shifting like liquid. The whispers returned, louder now, overlapping, almost urgent. "We wait, we see, we remember." Claire stumbled into a small chamber. Dust floated in the stagnant air, disturbed by her panicked movements. On the far wall, a series of portraits hung, faded, ancient faces of the Whitmore family. As she stepped closer, the eyes seemed to follow her, unblinking, accusing. She shook her head. "It's just the light, my imagination." But when she reached out, the portrait shifted slightly. The lips moved, just barely, forming words in silence. "Why are you here?" Claire's flashlight flickered violently. A cold wind brushed past her face, carrying the scent of old flowers, decay, and something else, like metallic, like blood long dried. The whispers became clearer. "You shouldn't have come back." Suddenly, the floor beneath her trembled. Tiny cracks appeared along the stone, weaving patterns like veins across the ground. Claire's breath caught in her throat as the cracks began to glowing faintly, outlining shapes that resembled hands, reaching, clawing from beneath the floor. Panic surged. She turned, looking for an exit, but each corridor led her deeper into the labyrinth. The tomb had become alive, reshaping itself. The walls seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. And then she heard it, a soft, deliberate voice from everywhere at once, cold, calm, terrifyingly familiar. "You belong to us." Claire screamed, dropping the flashlight. In the brief darkness, the portrait's eyes burned bright red, and the whispers turned into chants. Her vision blurred, the walls closing in, and for a moment she thought she might be swallowed by the tomb itself. When she looked up, she saw a figure standing in the far corner, tall, shrouded in shadow, eyes glowing faintly like candlelight. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe, but its presence was undeniable. "You cannot escape, not until the past is remembered." And as Claire's knees buckled, the chamber seemed to stretch endlessly, echoing with the voices of generations long forgotten, all waiting, all watching, all remembering. Claire crawled along the cold stone floor, every sense on edge. The whispers had grown deafening, overlapping into a cacophony of voices from the past, each one pressing on her mind. Remember, remember, remember. Ahead, a faint light glowed from beneath a partially hidden doorway, almost imperceptible in the shadowed labyrinth. She forced herself toward it, heart hammering in her chest. Pushing the heavy door open, she entered a chamber unlike the others. The walls were lined with intricately carved niches, each holding small urns, tightly sealed. A faint mist curled from the floor, carrying the same metallic scent as before. At the center of the room stood a large, cracked sarcophagus. Its lid was slightly ajar, revealing only darkness within. Claire's flashlight flickered as a cold breath of air whispered across her face. She peered into the opening and froze. Inside lay an old, dust-covered diary, bound in worn leather. She picked it up, hands trembling, and the whispers stopped for a single, suffocating moment. Opening the diary, she found entries written in fading ink, confessions, secrets, and warnings. The Whitmore family had not only been cursed, they had been hiding something sinister for generations. Names of family members, some who were said to have vanished, were listed alongside dates, and each was followed by a single, chilling word: claimed. A shiver ran down her spine. Claimed by what? Suddenly, the sarcophagus lid shifted violently. Claire stumbled back as a shadow emerged, not fully formed, but its presence filled the room. A hand, skeletal and pale, reached toward the diary. "Do you remember now?" the voice echoed, whispering from the walls, from the shadows, from nowhere and everywhere at once. Claire tried to flee, but the chamber seemed alive, the walls pulsating with unseen energy. The urns rattled, spilling ashes onto the floor, swirling into ghostly shapes that danced around her. Every step she took, the shadows multiplied, and the whispers became chants. "Finish what was started, or join us forever." Panic surged, but Claire forced herself to focus. She grabbed the diary and ran, weaving through the twisting corridors, feeling the cold, ghostly hands brush past her, almost tangible. The tomb groaned, as if protesting her escape, the air thick with the memories of the long-forgotten family. When she finally reached another exit, she stumbled into a chamber she hadn't seen before, one that didn't exist on the map of the tomb she had studied. And there, in the center, stood an enormous mirror, its surface black as obsidian, reflecting not her own terrified face, but the countless faces of the Whitmore family, all staring, all pleading, all silent. A single phrase formed on the mirror's surface in thick, misty letters. "The last piece belongs to you." Claire's breath caught. She realized the tomb's secret wasn't over. It was waiting for her to make the final choice. Claire stood frozen before the black mirror, the diary clutched to her chest. The faces of the Whitmore family seemed almost alive, their eyes following her every movement, whispering in unison. "The last piece belongs to you." Her pulse raced. She opened the diary again, scanning the faded pages. One entry, written in spidery handwriting, caught her eye. "When the last of us is found, the tomb completes itself. The bloodline ends or continues." A chill ran through her. The words made no sense until she looked closer at the mirror. The reflection staring back wasn't hers, or rather, it was her, but not the Claire she knew. Her reflection's eyes were hollow, its smile thin and knowing. The diary slipped from her trembling hands. It hit the floor with a dull thud. As she bent to pick it up, the mirror pulsed, black mist curling outward like smoke. Hands began to emerge, not from the mirror's surface, but from the floor, the walls, reaching toward her, clammy and cold. "Join us. Complete the line." Claire stumbled back, heart pounding, and tried to run. Every corridor she thought she knew twisted impossibly, leading her back to the chamber with the mirror. Panic clawed at her mind. The whispers turned into screams, pleading, demanding. Her reflection's lips moved first. Words, faint but unmistakable. "You called it here. Now it chooses you." Claire screamed, and for a fleeting second, she saw the family's faces converge, centuries of greed, fear, and secrets pressing in from the shadows. She felt herself pulled forward, the black glass drawing her in. Then, a sudden clarity. She remembered the diary's final note. "To resist, you must forget yourself." With a desperate cry, Claire closed her eyes and stepped away from the mirror. The hands grabbed, but she willed herself to stop struggling. In that moment of surrender, the chamber shook violently. The mirror cracked from within, splintering into thousands of black shards that fell silently to the floor. When she opened her eyes, she was alone. The diary lay open at the center of the room, blank pages staring back at her. The shadows had vanished, the whispers silenced. Claire fled the tomb, the morning sun breaking across the horizon. She glanced back once. The entrance looked ordinary, unremarkable, as if the horrors of the night had been a dream. But the diary had followed her. On its first page, a single line appeared in the same spidery hand. "Remember, the tomb never forgets, and neither do we." Claire's hands trembled as she closed it. She had survived, yes, but the knowledge remained. Some legacies, some curses, never truly end. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of the forgotten family tomb, the Whitmore line
was waiting for its next claim.